Courtroom was already buzzing when the news broke. A famous billionaire sat confidently at the defense table, flanked by assistants and security, while across the room a young woman stood alone, her hands trembling slightly. She was accused of stealing proprietary data worth millions. Everyone assumed the outcome was obvious, until the billionaire's high-profile lawyer suddenly stood up, whispered something urgent to his client, and announced he was withdrawing from the case. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. No one understood why a lawyer who never lost would quit mid-trial. The judge demanded an explanation, but the lawyer only said he could no longer ethically continue. The billionaire's face hardened, anger flashing across his eyes. He demanded a recess, but the judge refused. The trial would proceed. That's when the impossible happened. From the back of the courtroom, a man in a faded janitor's uniform slowly raised his hand. The room turned. People chuckled, assuming it was a joke. Then he spoke calmly, clearly. "Your Honor, I'll take her case." Laughter erupted. The bailiff stepped forward, ready to escort the man out. Even the judge looked irritated. "This is a court of law, not a stage," he warned. But the janitor didn't move. He reached into his pocket and placed a worn attorney ID on the table. Silence fell like a hammer. The name on the card hadn't been active in years, but it was real, very real. The judge's expression changed. He remembered that name. Years ago, this man had been one of the sharpest legal minds in the country, a prodigy who disappeared after a mysterious scandal. No one knew where he went. And now here he was, mopping floors in a courthouse, asking to defend a case no one believed could be won. Reluctantly, the judge allowed it. The billionaire smirked, convinced this was a gift. His new legal team rushed in, confident they'd crush a janitor pretending to be a lawyer. But the moment the trial resumed, the atmosphere shifted. The janitor, now standing tall, jacket borrowed, eyes sharp, began asking questions no one expected. Simple at first, then precise, then devastating. He exposed inconsistencies in the evidence. He questioned how the data was supposedly stolen and why security logs had missing timestamps. One witness began to sweat. Another contradicted earlier testimony. The courtroom grew tense. The billionaire's confidence slowly cracked as whispers spread through the gallery. This wasn't luck. This was mastery. During a brief recess, the truth surfaced. The janitor hadn't quit law because he failed. He quit because he refused to cover up corruption involving powerful people. His career was destroyed, his license quietly buried. Cleaning courts was the only way he could stay close to justice. And when he saw the young woman set up as a scapegoat, he knew he couldn't stay silent. The final blow came when he revealed a hidden clause in a confidential contract, one the billionaire himself had signed. It proved the data never belonged to the company in the first place. The courtroom exploded. The judge ordered an immediate review. Within minutes, the charges against the woman were dismissed. The billionaire stood frozen as prosecutors turned their attention toward him instead. His lawyers avoided his eyes. For the first time, he looked afraid. The janitor quietly returned the borrowed jacket, nodded to the judge, and walked back toward the door. The woman he saved broke down in tears, thanking him over and over. As he picked up his mop, someone asked if he'd return to practicing law. He smiled faintly and said, "Justice doesn't need a title, just someone willing to stand up." Then he disappeared down the hallway, leaving behind a courtroom and a billionaire, forever changed. And from that day on, whenever people entered that courthouse, they looked twice at the janitor. Because they knew now, you never really know who's holding the power to change everything. The courtroom had seen chaos before, but nothing like this. Just minutes after the janitor walked out, whispers still echoed through the halls. Reporters rushed to file breaking news, guards tightened security, and the billionaire sat motionless, staring at the empty doorway where everything had slipped out of his control. Most people thought the story was over. They were wrong. 2 days later, a new case was called in the same courtroom. A teenage boy stood in chains, accused of orchestrating a massive financial hack that allegedly cost investors hundreds of millions. Prosecutors called him a criminal genius. Social media had already convicted him. His court-appointed lawyer barely glanced at him, clearly unprepared and uninterested. The judge sighed, expecting another quick conviction. Then the door creaked open. The janitor stepped inside again, pushing his cart. Some people noticed him, most didn't. He quietly parked near the wall, pretending to wipe a bench, listening carefully as the prosecution laid out a perfect, airtight case. IP addresses, transactions, expert testimony. It sounded unbeatable. The boy kept his head down, knowing no one believed him. When the defense lawyer stood, he stumbled through a weak argument and sat down early. The judge was about to move on when a familiar, calm voice cut through the room. "Your Honor," the janitor said, "may I ask one question?" The room froze. The judge closed his eyes slowly, already sensing what was coming. Against every instinct, the judge allowed it one question. The janitor approached the witness stand and asked the cybersecurity expert to explain in simple terms how the hack worked. The expert obliged, confident. Then came the follow-up. One sentence. Quiet. Deadly. It exposed a technical impossibility in the prosecution's theory. The expert hesitated, tried to recover, failed. The courtroom leaned forward. The janitor kept going, dismantling the timeline piece by piece, revealing that the hack required access the boy never had. Someone else did. Someone much higher up. A name surfaced, connected to the same billionaire from the previous case. Murmurs turned into shock. The judge called for a recess, but it was too late. The truth had already cracked through the walls. Records were pulled. Phones rang. Prosecutors argued among themselves. The boy looked up for the first time, hope breaking through fear. When court resumed, the charges were dropped. Not pending review, dropped. Immediately. The boy collapsed into tears. His mother screamed his name from the gallery. Cameras flashed. And once again the janitor quietly stepped back, already fading into the background. This time the judge stopped him, asked him directly why he kept doing this. The janitor looked around the room, at the lawyers, the suits, the power, and said, "Because the truth keeps getting buried under titles and money. Someone has to dig it up." By the next morning, rumors spread that powerful people were panicking. Old cases were being reopened. Evidence long ignored was suddenly relevant again. And somewhere in the courthouse, a mop bucket rolled slowly down the hall. By the end of the week, the courthouse felt different, quieter, tense. People spoke in whispers as if the walls themselves were listening. The janitor had become a rumor, no name, no file, just stories. Some said he was a ghost of the legal system. Others said he was a warning. But no one expected him to return so soon. That morning, a sealed emergency hearing was called. No press, no public gallery, only a handful of judges, federal attorneys, and one powerful corporate CEO accused of laundering billions through shell companies. The evidence was classified. The outcome was supposed to be predetermined. The CEO's legal team walked in smiling, already discussing where to celebrate afterward.